Maya Chen had exactly $47 in her checking account when the video call came through. She was sitting in her studio apartment in Crown Heights, 400 square feet that cost $2,000 a month, which was insane but also Brooklyn, reviewing bills she couldn't pay and contemplating whether architecture school had been a terrible mistake. The student loans alone were crushing. Add her late mother's medical debt, and she was drowning in obligations that compounded faster than she could design her way out of them. Her laptop chimed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Probably spam, probably someone trying to sell her something she couldn't afford. But freelance architects couldn't afford to ignore potential clients. The screen filled with a woman's face, 50s, expensive haircut, the kind of polished competence that came from working in environments where mistakes cost millions. Maya Chen, speaking. My name is Patricia Vance. I'm Chief Operations Officer at Russo Properties. We received your portfolio from Professor Martinez at Cornell. Your thesis on biomimetic design in tropical climates was quite impressive. Maya's heart rate accelerated. Russo Properties. She knew the name. Everyone in New York real estate knew the name. 2 generations of luxury development. Hotels, residential towers, commercial properties across 3 continents. They didn't hire freelance architects working out of Brooklyn studios. Thank you, Maya managed. I'm surprised Professor Martinez forwarded my work. He didn't. We asked him for recommendations. Your name came up first. For what project? Patricia smiled, the kind of smile that meant the answer would be complicated. That's a conversation for our offices. Are you available tomorrow? 10 a.m.? Tomorrow. She had 3 meetings scheduled with potential clients, all of whom would probably hire someone else. This was Russo Properties. This was the kind of opportunity that changed careers. I'm available. Excellent. Our offices are in Hudson Yards, 47th floor. Mr. Russo will meet with you personally. The call ended. Maya sat staring at her laptop screen, at her reflection in the black glass. She looked tired. She looked broke. She looked like someone who'd been fighting gravity and losing ground every month. But she also had work to show. 3 boutique hotel renovations in the Catskills and Hudson Valley, each under $5 million. But design-forward projects that had been featured in Dwell and Wallpaper for innovative use of sustainable materials. Small projects, limited budgets, but sophisticated work that proved she understood how to create luxury with environmental consciousness. Russo Properties wanted to meet with her. She opened a new browser window and typed, Dominic Russo. The results were immediate and extensive. 38 years old, CEO of Russo Properties since his father's death 6 months ago. Educated at Harvard and London School of Economics. Net worth estimated at $2.1 billion. Photographs showed a man who looked like he'd been designed by the same architects who designed his buildings. All clean lines and expensive materials and absolute confidence. She clicked through articles. Dominic Russo continues family legacy. Russo Properties expands into Asian markets. Manhattan's most eligible bachelor focuses on business, not romance. One article mentioned his father's death. Heart attack. Sudden. Vincent Russo had been 71, still active in the business, apparently died in his office reviewing development plans. The article noted that Vincent had founded Russo Properties in 1972 with a single building in Little Italy, building it over 50 years into a billion-dollar empire. Maya kept reading until midnight. By the time she finally closed her laptop, she knew 3 things. This opportunity was too good to be real. Dominic Russo was too wealthy to care about struggling architects. And she was going to that meeting anyway because desperation made excellent motivation. She wore her one good dress, navy Everlane, $60 on sale, and carried her portfolio in a leather bag that had cost $40 at a sample sale, but looked expensive if you didn't examine it too closely. The subway to Hudson Yards took 30 minutes and cost $2.75, which was money she'd have to decide not to spend on coffee later. The Russo Properties building was exactly what she'd expected. Glass and steel, the kind of architecture that announced wealth without apologizing for it. The lobby had Carrara marble floors that reflected overhead lighting like still water. An original Rothko hung behind the reception desk. Not a print, the actual painting, which meant someone had decided 8 figures was reasonable decor. Maya approached reception. The woman behind the desk had the kind of beauty that required maintenance. perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect nails that clicked against her keyboard with manicured precision. Maya Chen for Dominic Rousseau. The receptionist's smile was professional and slightly amused, like she recognized the dress from its sale price. 47th floor, elevator bank C. The elevator was empty except for Maya and her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked small. She looked out of place. She looked like someone who was about to be told this was all a mistake. The doors opened onto a reception area that made the lobby look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the Hudson River, New Jersey in the distance. The furniture was mid-century modern, real pieces, not reproductions. Eames chairs that cost 5 figures each. A conference table that was probably custom Italian. Another receptionist, equally polished. Ms. Chen, Mr. Russo is expecting you. Follow me. They walked down a hallway lined with architectural renderings and photographs of completed projects. Hotels in Dubai, residential, towers in Singapore. A resort in Cabo that Maya recognized from Architectural Digest. Each project represented hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, the kind of scale she'd only experienced in classroom exercises. The corner office door was open. The receptionist gestured for her to enter. Dominic Russo stood at the window, phone to his ear, speaking Italian. He was taller than his photograph suggested, 6'2", maybe 6'3", wearing a charcoal suit that fit the way suits fit when they're made specifically for your body. Brioni, probably. $6,000 minimum. He turned, saw her, and wrapped up the call in rapid Italian that sounded like negotiation concluding in his favor. Ms. Chen. His voice matched his appearance, confident, cultured, the kind of accent that came from international schools and multiple residences. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation. Maya set her portfolio on his conference table, trying not to notice how her $40 bag looked against the polished walnut surface. I'm curious why Russo Properties would be interested in a freelance architect with limited major projects on her resume. He smiled, genuine amusement, not the polite business version. You don't believe in soft openings. I believe in not wasting time, yours or mine. Fair. He gestured to the chairs. They sat. I read your thesis. Your approach to biomimetic design, using natural systems to solve architectural challenges, is exactly what I need for a project I'm developing. And your hotel work in the Hudson Valley showed you understand how to create luxury experiences within environmental constraints. What project? He opened his laptop, turned it toward her. Satellite imagery filled the screen. An atoll in impossibly blue water. White sand, coral reefs visible through crystal clear shallows. The Maldives, North Malay Atoll. 127 acres. I'm building a luxury eco-resort. 50 villas, zero environmental impact, full sustainability. The kind of property that proves luxury and environmental responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. Maya studied the imagery. The atoll was pristine, undeveloped, natural, the kind of location that would be destroyed by conventional construction. Construction in the Maldives is complicated, she said. Rising sea levels, coral reef protection, limited fresh water, waste management challenges. Most developers ignore those issues and build anyway. I'm not most developers. Then you need someone with experience in tropical marine environments, someone who's built in similar conditions. I need someone who understands that the environment isn't an obstacle to overcome. It's the foundation for design. He pulled up her thesis renderings, buildings that mimicked coral structure, foundations that enhanced rather than destroyed marine ecosystems, water systems based on mangrove filtration. These aren't just beautiful, he said. They're intelligent. They solve problems before they exist. Your hotel work proves you can deliver sophisticated results within budget constraints. Maya felt the familiar flush of someone recognizing her work for what it actually was. Most clients tell me those designs are impossible. Most clients are thinking too small. He closed the laptop. Budget for this project is $350 million. Money is not a constraint. Environmental impact must be zero, preferably negative. I want construction that regenerates the reef, protects marine life, and provides luxury accommodation that makes guests feel like they're experiencing paradise without destroying it. $350 million, Maya's largest project to date had been a boutique hotel renovation worth $4 million. When do you need designs? Initial concepts in 6 weeks, full architectural plans in 4 months, construction starts in 7 months. That's an aggressive timeline. I know, which is why I'm prepared to pay you $250,000 for design work, $50,000 advance paid today. She kept her face neutral, but her heart was hammering. $50,000 today would change everything. Would pay bills, cover rent for months, give her breathing room to actually think. "What's the catch?" she asked. His expression shifted. Respect, maybe. "Why do you assume there's a catch?" "Because billionaire developers don't hire architects with 3 small hotel renovations for their largest international projects. There's either something wrong with the project or something you're not telling me." Smart. He stood, walked to the window. Manhattan stretched below them, all those buildings, all that money, all that power built on someone else's labor. "There's no catch," he said finally. "I need someone brilliant who isn't connected to the established architecture world. Someone who won't have preconceived ideas about what luxury means or how these resorts have to be built. Someone who's hungry enough to care about every detail." He turned back to face her. "And honestly, I need someone who won't ask too many questions about where the money comes from." There it was, the thing that made this offer too good to be true. "Where does the money come from?" Maya asked. "Investors, international capital, perfectly legal, thoroughly documented, completely above board." He said it smoothly, like he'd practiced the answer. "But private, they value discretion." Every instinct said, walk away. This was how people ended up designing buildings for money laundering or drug cartels or worse. This was how careers ended in scandal instead of success. But $50,000 today, and $200,000 more when the project completed. "I need 48 hours to think about it," she said. "Take 24. I'm flying to Malé on Wednesday. You're coming with me if you accept." "That's not 48 hours. No, it's reality. This project moves on my timeline, or it doesn't move." She stood, gathered her portfolio. "I'll give you an answer by tomorrow evening." He handed her a card, heavy stock, engraved. "My direct line. Call anytime." She took the elevator down, walked out into Hudson Yards, and immediately started researching. Back in her apartment, Maya spent 6 hours building a profile of Russo Properties. Every public filing, every project history, every piece of press coverage she could find. The company was legitimate. 2 generations of real estate development, hundreds of successful projects, billions in assets. Vincent Russo had started the company in 1972 with a single apartment building in Little Italy, built it into an empire over 50 years. Dominic had inherited the company 6 months ago and immediately expanded into new markets: Asia, Middle East, South Pacific. The Maldives resort was his largest project, the kind of flagship development that would define his legacy separate from his father's. Everything looked clean, almost too clean. She called her thesis advisor at Cornell. Professor Martinez answered on the 3rd ring. "Maya, I was hoping you'd call. You recommended me to Russo Properties. Dominic Russo called me directly, asked for the best sustainable design specialist I'd ever taught. I gave him 3 names. Yours was first. Why? Because you're brilliant and you deserve an opportunity like this. Why are you questioning it? Because it seems too good to be real. Sometimes opportunities are just opportunities. Take it." She hung up, looked at her bank account. $47. Looked at her student loan balance. $160,000. Looked at the medical bills from her mother's final illness. $90,000 still outstanding. Maya picked up her phone and called Dominic Russo's direct line. He answered immediately. "Ms. Chen, I accept. When do we leave?" "Wednesday morning, private terminal at Teterboro Airport." Maya arrived in an Uber she couldn't afford, carrying a suitcase she'd borrowed from her roommate. The private jet was parked on the tarmac like a piece of sculpture, not a small jet. A Gulfstream G650, which she knew cost $70 million because she'd once designed a hangar for a client who owned one. White exterior, Russo Properties logo, discreet near the tail. Dominic stood at the bottom of the stairs, wearing jeans and a white linen shirt that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "Ready?" The interior was exactly what $70 million bought. cream leather seats that looked like they'd never been used, burled wood accents, a conference area, a bedroom in the back, 4 crew members, 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants who treated her like she belonged here. "Make yourself comfortable," Dominic said. "It's a 14-hour flight. There's a bedroom if you want to sleep, food whenever you're hungry, and Wi-Fi that actually works." Maya chose Medi window seat. The leather was softer than anything she'd ever touched. The flight attendant brought champagne, Dom Perignon, served in Baccarat crystal. She sipped carefully, watching through the window as they taxied. She'd never flown private before, had never experienced travel where the only security check was someone verifying your name, where you walked directly from car to plane, where departure times were suggestions, not requirements. Dominic sat across from her, laptop open, working through what looked like financial documents. "Nervous?" he asked without looking up. "About the project or the flying?" "Either. I don't get nervous, I get thorough." He smiled. "I'm learning that about you." They flew east, chasing the sun. Lunch was served an hour into the flight. Seared tuna that had probably been swimming yesterday. Vegetables she couldn't name, but that tasted expensive. Wine that the flight attendant announced was a 2015 Chateau Margaux. Maya Googled it discreetly. $1,200 per bottle. This was his normal. This was how billionaires traveled. Not just the private jet, but the casual assumption that everyone around them lived the same way. "Tell me about your father," she said. Dominic looked up from his laptop. "Why?" "Because I'm designing a resort that's supposed to be his legacy. I should understand who he was." He was complicated. Dominic closed the laptop. Immigrant family, started with nothing, built the company through intelligence and very hard work. He had exacting standards. Everything had to be perfect. Every detail mattered. He was difficult to work for and impossible to please. "But you took over the company. I'm his only child. I didn't have much choice." "There's always a choice." "Is there?" He studied her. "You took this job. Why? Money? That's honest. You wanted someone desperate enough not to ask questions. I'm being clear about why I'm desperate." "Your mother's medical bills." She tensed. "How do you know about that?" "I do due diligence on everyone I work with. Your mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. Experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. You've been paying off the debt ever since." Maya should have been angry at the invasion of privacy. Instead, she just felt tired. "So, you knew I'd say yes." "I knew you needed the opportunity. There's a difference." They flew in silence for a while. Below them, the Atlantic stretched endlessly. Dark water, no land visible, just the curve of the earth and the aircraft's shadow on the clouds. "My father built the company from nothing," Dominic said finally. "But nothing isn't free. He made deals with people I wouldn't have chosen, made compromises I wish he hadn't. By the time I inherited the business, those deals were already made, those compromises already binding." "What kind of deals?" "The kind that require $350 million resorts in the Maldives to make certain investors feel confident their money is well placed." There it was again. The suggestion that the money wasn't entirely clean. The project wasn't entirely what it seemed. "Should I be worried?" Maya asked. "No, you should design brilliant architecture. Everything else is my problem." They landed in Malé 16 hours after takeoff, accounting for time zones. It was somehow still Wednesday. The heat hit like a physical force, 95 degrees, humidity so thick it felt like swimming through air. A speedboat waited at the marina, Riva Mare, 42 feet of Italian engineering and teak decks. The driver was local, Maldivian, wearing a polo shirt with Russo Properties embroidered on the chest. 45 minutes to the site, Dominic said, helping her into the boat. "You'll want sunglasses. The sun is brutal." They cut across open water, the boat slicing through turquoise shallows, so clear Maya could see the coral formations 20 feet below. The Indian Ocean stretched in every direction, endless blue, no other boats visible, just them and the water and the sky. Islands appeared on the horizon, small ones, maybe 5 acres each, covered in palm trees and white sand. Maldivian resorts. She recognized some from travel magazines. One, only Rithi Ra, Soneva Fushi, properties that cost $2,000 per night and were booked years in advance. The driver pointed ahead. Russo Property. The atoll emerged from heat shimmer, larger than the others, a natural lagoon protected by coral reef, beaches that looked like they'd been painted rather than formed by nature. No buildings yet, just sand, palms, pristine coastline, and a single temporary structure near the beach. The boat beached gently. Dominic jumped out, offered his hand to help her down. The sand was impossibly white, powder soft, the kind of beach that existed in vacation fantasies. "What do you think?" he asked. Maya turned slowly, taking in the entire atoll. The lagoon was perfect for floating villas. The reef structure would support biomimetic foundations. The prevailing wind patterns were ideal for natural cooling systems. The water clarity meant underwater architecture could be both functional and aesthetic. "I think this is going to be the most beautiful project I've ever designed," she said. The temporary structure was more sophisticated than she'd expected. Thatched roof for aesthetics, but reinforced underneath. Open walls for airflow. Solar panels cleverly hidden in the roof design. Inside was a full site office. Drafting tables, computers, communications equipment, a small kitchen area. 3 people were waiting. An American man in his 50s wearing cargo shorts and a sunburned nose, a Maldivian woman in modest local dress, and a man who looked Russian, tall, bald, wearing tactical clothing despite the heat. "Maya Chen, this is Mark Patterson, my project manager. Amira Hassan, environmental compliance officer, and Vasily Kozlov, head of security." Security. For a construction site, on a remote atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Mark shook her hand enthusiastically. "Finally, the architect. I've been managing construction permits with no one to consult. It's been a nightmare." Amira's handshake was professional, but wary. "I'll need to review all your designs for environmental impact before permits are approved." Vasily didn't shake hands, just nodded once. His eyes were constantly moving, scanning the water, the tree line, the approaches. "What exactly are you securing?" Maya asked him. "The site, the staff, Mr. Russo's safety." "From what?" "From whatever comes." Dominic cut in smoothly. "The Maldives can be unpredictable. Political instability, occasional piracy in the region. Vasily ensures we're prepared for anything." It was reasonable. Remote construction sites needed security. But something about Vasily's presence felt excessive, like they were preparing for invasion, not building a resort. The first week established a rhythm. Maya worked 14-hour days, surveying the site, testing water quality, mapping coral formations, sketching preliminary designs. The atoll revealed itself slowly. Every beach had different sand composition. Every section of reef had unique characteristics. The lagoon depth varied by location. Her designs began to take shape. Villas that appeared to float during monsoon season. Foundations that encouraged coral growth instead of destroying it. Water systems that mimicked natural filtration through artificial mangrove structures. She designed buildings that looked organic, like they'd grown from the reef rather than been imposed on it. Dominic watched her work, not hovering, not micromanaging, just observing. She'd look up from sketching and find him standing at the office window, coffee in hand, tracking her progress. Evenings, they had dinner at his existing compound, a luxury resort he owned on a nearby atoll, a 40-minute boat ride from the construction site. The compound had 8 villas, each one a study in understated luxury, teak floors, open-air bathrooms, infinity pools that seemed to merge with the ocean. They ate on the terrace overlooking the water, served by staff who appeared silently and retreated just as quietly. "You speak 6 languages," Maya said one evening, watching him switch effortlessly from English to Italian to Russian on phone calls. 7. "But my Mandarin is terrible." "Why so many?" "Business is international. My father insisted I learn to negotiate in native tongues. It builds trust. Or it makes it easier to hide what you're really saying." He smiled. "That too." She learned things about him in those evening conversations. He had a PhD in economics from LSE, had considered academia before his father's heart attack forced him into the business. He played chess at master level, spoke fluent Russian because his mother was from St. Petersburg, had lived in 11 countries by age 25. "Do you ever stop working?" she asked one night. "Do you?" "I'm designing the biggest project of my career. I have an excuse. I'm running a $2.1 billion company while being investigated by people who think I'm laundering money for international criminals. I think I have an excuse too. The casual admission landed between them like a stone. Maya set down her wine glass. Investigated by whom? Does it matter? It matters if I'm part of something illegal. You're designing buildings. That's not illegal. It is if the buildings are being used for money laundering. Dominic looked at her, really looked, the kind of gaze that felt like assessment and something else. Would you believe me if I said the resort is legitimate? I'd believe you want it to be. That's more honest than I expected. I don't do dishonest. No, I'm learning that about you. The wind shifted, carrying salt spray and the sound of waves. Below them, the ocean was black, except where moonlight caught the surface. My father made deals I wouldn't have made, Dominic said finally. The resort is my attempt to build something clean. Something that proves the Russo name can mean beautiful architecture and environmental responsibility, not just money laundering. I was going to say complicated financing, but sure, that's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They finished dinner in loaded silence, the kind where everything unsaid was more important than the conversation. 6 weeks into the project, Maya was ready to present. She'd developed 40 pages of renderings, villas that seemed to grow from the reef, a central pavilion based on nautilus shell architecture, water systems that would actually improve ocean quality rather than pollute it. Cost projections put the resort at $350 million, potentially increasing to $400 million with advanced environmental systems. The presentation was scheduled via video conference. Dominic's investors wanted to see progress before approving next phase funding. They set up in the site office. Maya's laptop connected to a large monitor, high-speed satellite internet, making video possible despite their remote location. Dominic sat beside her, dressed in a suit despite the heat. This was business, appearances mattered. The video call connected. 6 faces appeared on screen, men in suits, serious expressions, expensive offices visible behind them. She recognized types, financiers, developers, the kind of people who made billion-dollar decisions over coffee. One man stood out. Older, thick accent that sounded Eastern European, background that looked like it might be Moscow or Prague. Ms. Chen, Dominic said formally, please proceed with the presentation. She walked them through her designs, the biomimetic foundations, the coral regeneration systems, the floating villa architecture that would adapt to rising sea levels. She showed cost breakdowns, construction, timelines, environmental certifications they had achieved. The investors asked sharp questions. She answered with specifics, with data, with confidence earned from weeks of thorough research. The timeline is aggressive, one investor noted. 18 months from breaking ground to opening. It's achievable with proper project management and weather contingency planning, Maya responded. And the special facilities? The Eastern European man, his nameplate read Dmitry Volkov, leaned forward. The underground storage areas? Maya glanced at Dominic. Underground storage wasn't in her designs. Covered in private briefing, Dominic said smoothly, cutting her off before she could question. The meeting continued. More questions, more answers, more assessment from men who clearly weren't used to being impressed. But her designs were impressive. She knew it, they knew it. Finally, approved. Budget set at $350 million, potential increase to $400 million for enhanced environmental systems. Begin permitting immediately. The call ended. Maya closed her laptop slowly. Underground storage? She asked. For equipment. Standard resort infrastructure. It wasn't in the brief. Because it's not part of the architectural design, it's operational necessity. What kind of operations require underground storage in a luxury resort? The kind that keep costs down and guests comfortable. Maya, he touched her hand. You were brilliant. They're very impressed. That approval was harder to get than you realize. Because they're not actually interested in a resort. They're interested in returns on investment. The resort provides that. Everything else is logistics. She should push, should demand to know what those men were actually funding. But his hand was still on hers, and the approval meant $50,000 deposited tomorrow, and she was tired of questioning opportunities that might actually be real. When do we start construction? She asked instead. Permits will take 2 months, groundbreaking in 3. You'll need to be on site full-time once construction starts. Full-time meaning? Relocate here. 18 months, live at my compound, oversee every detail, ensure the build matches your vision. 18 months, away from New York, away from any chance of other clients, completely dependent on this one project. My mother's medical bills, Maya said. You said you'd cover them. I will. Consider it advance against your completion bonus. $2 million when the resort opens. $2 million. The number felt fictional. Life-changing didn't even begin to describe it. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why me? Because I need someone I can trust, and I think I can trust you. You barely know me. I know you're brilliant. I know you're honest. I know you care about this work more than you care about money, which paradoxically makes you trustworthy about money. That's circular logic. That's human nature. She looked at him, really looked. Saw someone who was maybe just as trapped as she was, who'd inherited an empire he didn't entirely control, who was trying to build something legitimate from a foundation that maybe wasn't, who needed allies and found them wherever he could. I'll relocate, she said, but I want contracts, everything in writing, timeline, compensation, exit clauses if the project gets shut down. Done. Arthur Hastings, my attorney, will draft everything. They shook hands, professional, formal, sealing a deal that would define both their futures. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. The heat, the adrenaline from the presentation, the weight of commitment she'd just made. She walked out to the beach, found the water glowing with bioluminescent plankton, each wave leaving trails of blue light. She wasn't alone. Dominic stood at the waterline, barefoot, pants rolled up, watching the light show. Can't sleep either? He asked. Too much coffee, too many thoughts. Want to swim? In the dark? Best time. The plankton glow when you move. He was already walking into the water, fully clothed, not waiting for her answer. Maya hesitated. This was unprofessional. This was crossing lines. Then followed. The water was body temperature, the plankton creating constellations with every movement. Dominic swam out past where they could stand, floating on his back, trails of light following his hands. Why me? Maya asked again, treading water beside him. Really, why hire someone with 3 small hotel renovations, no reputation, no connections? Because everyone with reputation and connections would ask different questions. They'd want to know who the investors were. They'd investigate the financing. They'd make connections I can't afford them to make. And I was desperate enough not to ask. You were honest enough to admit you were desperate. That's different. Not by much. He rolled upright, water streaming off his shoulders. They were close enough that she could see his expression in the moonlight, something vulnerable, something that didn't show in boardrooms or business meetings. I'm trying to build something good, he said quietly. I inherited a company that my father built on compromises I wouldn't have made. Every project has investors I didn't choose, obligations I didn't create. The resort is my chance to prove the Russo name can mean beautiful architecture and environmental responsibility, not just money laundering. I was going to say complicated financing, but sure. If it's really just complicated financing, why the FBI investigation? Because complicated looks criminal from the outside. Because my father made deals with people whose reputations are worse than their actions. Because I'm 38 and wealthy, and that makes me automatically suspicious. Or you're actually laundering money, and I'm designing the prettiest crime scene in history. He laughed, genuine, surprised. Would you still be here if you thought that? I don't know. The money is really good. That's honest. They floated in comfortable silence, bioluminescence swirling around them. This moment felt separate from everything else. Not boss and employee, not billionaire and struggling architect. Just 2 people in the middle of the Indian Ocean, questioning their choices. For what it's worth, Maya said, the resort is the best work I've ever done. If it's a crime scene, at least it'll be gorgeous. That should not be as reassuring as it is. The moment stretched. His hand brushed hers underwater. Accident or intention unclear. The attraction had been building for weeks. Every shared dinner, every design review, where he actually understood what she was doing. Every conversation that went deeper than professional necessity. Then Vasili's voice crackled over the radio attached to Dominic's belt. Mr. Russo, Unidentified boat approaching from south. The moment shattered. They swam back to shore, the romance replaced by whatever security concern had Vasily on alert. By the time they reached the compound, the boat had turned away. Probably just fishermen, probably nothing. But Maya noticed how quickly Dominic shifted back into controlled executive mode, how Vasily appeared with tactical gear, how the entire compound suddenly felt less like paradise and more like fortress. She went to bed wondering what she'd actually signed up for. The next morning, Maya packed her belongings from the Brooklyn apartment she'd returned to one last time before relocating permanently. The contract had been delivered overnight. Arthur Hastings worked fast. 60 pages of legal language that boiled down to design the resort, don't ask questions, get paid life-changing money. She should have felt excited. This was the opportunity she'd been working towards since architecture school. Instead, she felt unsettled. She was sorting through boxes of her mother's belongings, things she'd stored but never properly processed, when she found the photographs. Old, faded, printed on actual photo paper from the 1990s. Her mother was young in the photos, 23, maybe 24, before Maya was born, before cancer, before medical debt and struggle and everything that defined Maya's childhood. The photos were from New York. She recognized the streets, Little Italy, probably Mulberry Street. Her mother stood beside two men in several photos, one older, Italian, handsome in the way that money made men handsome. The other younger, Asian American, casual clothing, warm smile. They looked intimate, the younger man's arm around her mother's waist, her mother laughing at something one of them had said, the body language of people who were more than friends. Maya turned one photo over, her mother's handwriting, faded but legible. VR plus MC Puz LC 1994. VRMCLC. She opened her laptop, pulled up the Russo Properties website, navigated to the history page. Vincent Russo, founder and CEO until his death 6 months ago. Born in Sicily, immigrated to New York in 1968, built the company from a single property to a billion-dollar empire. She compared the photo to Vincent's official portraits. Same man, older in the portraits, but unmistakably the same. Her mother had known Vincent Russo, but who was MC? She typed into Google, Marco Chen Russo Properties 1994. The results made her stop breathing. Marco Chen, Vincent Russo's business partner from 1985-1994, died in construction accident, February 1994, 1 month before Maya was born. She searched frantically through her mother's belongings. Found more photos, found letters, found a bank statement from 1995 showing quarterly deposits of $12,500, $50,000 per year, every year until her mother's death 2 years ago. Support payments, 30 years of support payments. Maya pulled up her birth certificate. Father, Marco Chen. Not unknown, Marco Chen, the man in the photographs. Vincent Russo's business partner, who died in a construction accident 1 month before she was born. She found a news article about the accident. Construction safety violation leads to fatal accident. Marco Chen, 32, dies at Russo Properties site. The article mentioned that Vincent Russo had been on site during the accident, had tried to save his partner, had been devastated by the loss. Maya sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by evidence of a connection she'd never known existed. Vincent Russo wasn't her father, but he'd supported her for 30 years, had paid her mother, had kept the connection secret because he felt responsible for Marco Chen's death, because he'd promised his dying partner he'd look after Linda and the baby. She looked at the photos again. Marco Chen, young, smiling, his hand on her pregnant mother's belly, looked like her. Same eyes, same bone structure. Her father, dead before she was born, because of a construction accident at a Russo Properties site. And Dominic was the son of the man whose company had killed her father, the man who'd been supporting her out of guilt for 30 years, the man who'd just offered her $2 million to design a resort. Maya pulled up her phone and stared at Dominic Russo's number. Then she packed everything, the photos, the letters, the evidence, and decided. She'd go to the Maldives, she'd design the resort. She'd figure out if Dominic knew, and then she'd decide what to do with the truth. After all, she'd already taken the money, and sometimes she was learning. Family was more complicated than blood. Sometimes it was about promises kept across decades. Sometimes it was about guilt transformed into responsibility. And sometimes, just sometimes, beautiful architecture could be built on foundations of tragedy, if the people building it were committed to making something good from something broken. Maya returned to the Maldives 2 weeks later with 3 suitcases and a secret she hadn't decided whether to tell. The photographs of her mother with Vincent Russo and Marco Chen were buried at the bottom of her luggage, underneath practical clothing and architectural tools. Evidence of a connection that might explain everything or complicate everything beyond repair. Dominic met her at the dock himself, not sending staff. He wore linen pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, barefoot despite being a billionaire. He looked relaxed. He looked like someone who belonged in paradise. He looked like the son of the man whose company had killed her father. "Welcome back," he said, taking her bags. "You're staying in the guest villa, private pool, ocean view, completely separate from the main compound. I thought you'd want space." The guest villa was 500 square meters of understated luxury. Teak floors, open-air bathroom with rain shower, bedroom that opened directly onto a deck and infinity pool. The furniture was custom. She recognized the craftsmanship. Probably Italian, probably cost more than her entire year's rent in Brooklyn. "This is where guests stay?" she asked. "This is where you stay. Guests get the smaller villas." She should have expected this level of wealth. She'd seen his jet, his offices, his existing resort. But living in it was different. This was her home for the next 18 months, a space that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. "The main pavilion is for meals," Dominic continued. "Staff serves breakfast at 7, dinner at 8. You can request food anytime. The office is 15 minutes by boat. We leave at 8:30. Vasily handles all transportation and security." Security for what? General precaution, remote location, valuable equipment, foreign workers, standard protocol. It wasn't standard. She'd worked construction sites before. Security meant a night watchman with a flashlight, not a former Russian special forces operator with tactical training. But she didn't argue. Just unpacked her things, hung her clothes in a closet larger than her Brooklyn bathroom, and tried to adjust to living in a place where luxury was assumed rather than aspirational. The compound had 8 villas total. Dominic's was the largest, the one she'd been in. That night they swam with bioluminescent plankton. Mark Patterson, the project manager, stayed in another. Vasily had a smaller villa near the dock, positioned to see all approaches. The remaining villas were for rotating staff and occasional business visitors. The first few weeks established rhythm. Maya woke before dawn, worked out in the compound's gym, had breakfast alone on her terrace watching sunrise over the Indian Ocean. Dominic would appear at 8:15 with coffee and the day's agenda, permits to review, construction timelines to approve, video calls with suppliers. The boat ride to the resort site became their morning ritual, 15 minutes across open water, the ocean changing colors as the sun rose higher. Sometimes Dominic drove, handling the Riva with the same confident precision he brought to everything. Sometimes Vasily drove, silent and watchful, scanning horizons for threats Maya couldn't imagine. At the site, work consumed everything. The permits had finally cleared. Amira Hassan's environmental compliance had been thorough enough to satisfy even Maldivian officials who were notoriously difficult. Breaking ground was scheduled for next week. Maya spent her days finalizing construction drawings, marking foundation locations, coordinating with Mark on logistics. Dominic watched her work. She'd feel his presence before she saw him, standing at the temporary office window, coffee in hand, that assessing look that might have been attraction or might have been calculation. With him, it was always both. Evenings were different, less formal than those first weeks before she relocated. They'd have dinner at the main pavilion, sometimes joined by Mark, who told construction stories from Atlantic City and Dubai, sometimes just the two of them. The conversations went deeper when they were alone. "Why architecture?" Dominic asked one night. "My mother wanted me to be a doctor, more stable, better money, but I couldn't see myself in medicine." "Why not?" "Because medicine is about fixing what's broken. Architecture is about creating something that didn't exist before. I like the idea of making beauty from nothing." "That's romantic." That's honest. He refilled her wine, a Brunello de Montalcino that probably cost $500 a bottle. My father wanted me to take over the company, had me working construction sites every summer from age 14, learning the business from the ground up. Did you want it? I wanted to please him. There's a difference. Is there? You tell me. You took this job. Why? Money? That's honest. You wanted someone desperate enough not to ask questions. I'm being clear about why I'm desperate. Your mother's medical bills. She couldn't argue. He'd done his research. So, you knew I'd say yes. I knew you needed the opportunity. There's a difference. 3 weeks into her residence, Maya woke to the sound of helicopters. Not Dominic's. His helicopter had a specific engine note. She'd learned to recognize it. This was different. Heavier, multiple aircraft. She ran to her terrace. 2 helicopters circled the compound. Official markings, government insignia. Speedboats approached from multiple directions, more than she could count. Agents visible with weapons and tactical gear. This wasn't investigation. This was arrest. Dominic was already at her villa within minutes, dressed emergency bag over his shoulder. Stay here. Don't answer questions without Arthur Hastings present. What's happening? FBI, they're executing search warrants. For what? Everything. The compound, the resort site, probably my offices in New York. They're moving. Before she could respond, federal agents swarmed the compound. Men and women in FBI windbreakers, some armed, all professional. A woman in her 40s approached. Asian American, sharp eyes, wedding ring catching sunlight. Dominic Russo? Her voice carried authority. I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen. We have warrants to search this property and question all residents. Chen, same last name. Maya wondered if the agent noticed. I need to see the warrants, Dominic said calmly. Agent Chen handed over documents. Dominic reviewed them with the careful attention of someone who'd been expecting this. These cover the compound and the business offices, not the resort construction site. We have separate warrants for the site. Show me. More documents. Dominic reviewed, nodded. Everything appears in order. We'll cooperate fully. But I'm calling my attorney before anyone answers questions. Of course, that's your right. The search was systematic and thorough. Agents went through every villa, every office, every piece of equipment. They seized computers, financial documents, communication equipment. They photographed everything, documented everything, treated the compound like a crime scene. Maya was questioned separately in her villa. Agent Chen and a younger male agent, both professional but clearly suspicious. How long have you worked for Mr. Russo? Agent Chen asked. 3 months. What's your role? I'm the architect for the Maldives Resort Project. And you're staying at his private compound because? It's closer to the construction site, more efficient. You're aware Mr. Russo is under investigation for money laundering? He mentioned federal interest in his business practices. And you continued working for him? Designing buildings isn't illegal. I reviewed my contract with an attorney. Everything is legitimate. Agent Chen leaned forward. Ms. Chen, do you mind if I call you Maya? I prefer Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen, do you know who's financing this resort? Russo Properties and international investors. Do you know who those investors are? No, I design architecture. I don't structure financing. Have you ever seen money being moved through the resort accounts? I don't have access to financial accounts. Have you witnessed any communications that seemed suspicious? Agent Chen, I'm an architect. I draw buildings. I calculate structural loads and environmental impact. I don't witness suspicious communications because I'm not looking for them. The agent studied her. You seem intelligent, educated. Cornell, impressive thesis. You must realize this project isn't what it appears to be. This project is exactly what it appears to be. A luxury eco-resort being built to specifications I designed. If there are financial irregularities, they're above my clearance and beyond my knowledge. Be careful, Ms. Chen. Sometimes beautiful islands are built on ugly foundations. Sometimes ugly accusations are built on insufficient evidence. Agent Chen smiled, not warmly. We'll see. The agents left after 6 hours, took boxes of documents, hard drives, phones, left the compound feeling violated despite the legal warrants. Dominic found Maya on her terrace at sunset. He looked exhausted. They're building a RICO case, he said without preamble. What does that mean? Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Federal statute for prosecuting organized crime. If they can prove the resort is being used to launder money from criminal enterprises, everyone involved gets charged, including you. I'm the architect. I'm not involved in financing. You're staying at my compound, accepting money from accounts they consider suspect. They'll argue you knew or should have known. That's insane. That's federal prosecution. They cast wide nets and sort out innocents later. Maya stood, paced to the railing. Below, the ocean was darkening, the sun disappearing into the horizon. Paradise suddenly felt less peaceful. "Tell me the truth," she said. "All of it. Who are these investors?" Dominic was quiet for a long time. Then, "My father made deals in the 80s and 90s with people who needed legitimate investments for illegitimate money. Real estate was perfect, high values, complex transactions, easy to obscure origins. He didn't have a choice. He needed capital, they provided it, and refusing meant losing everything. That's money laundering. That's how business worked in New York real estate for decades. My father wasn't unique. He was just successful. And you continued it. I inherited it, along with obligations to investors who expect returns. The resort is my attempt to transition to legitimate business, real project, real value, real revenue. But some of the seed capital came from sources that are criminal, complicated. Those aren't synonyms. In federal court they are." She turned to face him. "Why didn't you tell me before I relocated? Would you have come if I had?" "No." "Then that's why." The honesty was almost worse than the lie. He'd known she'd run, so he'd withheld information until she was too committed to leave easily. "I should leave anyway," Maya said. "You should, but you won't." "Why not?" "Because the resort is the best work you've ever done. Because walking away means admitting the last 3 months were waste. Because you need the completion bonus to be free of debt. Because—" he stepped closer. "Because you're not sure I'm the villain in this story." He wasn't wrong about any of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "We continue working, finish construction, open the resort, prove it's legitimate business generating real revenue. If we succeed, the charges get harder to prove. If we fail, we both go to prison." That's quite a motivational speech. That's reality. They stood at the railing, not touching, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. "I saw the FBI's warrant application," Dominic continued quietly. "They think you're my accomplice, or my victim. They haven't decided which." "What do you think I am?" He looked at her. Really looked, the way he had the night in the bioluminescent water. "I think you're brilliant and ethical, and trapped in a situation you didn't create. I think I should have been honest from the beginning. I think I'm sorry." The apology surprised her more than the admission. "Sorry isn't a great legal defense," she said. "No, but it's what I have." The moment stretched. She should walk away. Call her own lawyer. Distance herself before the FBI decided she was accomplice instead of victim. But his presence was magnetic in ways that had nothing to do with money or opportunity. "I'm going for a swim," she said. "Alone. You should go deal with whatever crisis comes next." She walked to the beach without waiting for his response, stripped down to underwear, and dove into water that was blood-warm and dark as ink. Swam until her arms burned and her lungs ached and the compound was distant lights rather than immediate problems. When she emerged, Dominic was sitting on her beach, fully clothed, watching. "I thought you were going to deal with crisis," she said. "You're the crisis I'm dealing with." "That's not comforting." "It's not supposed to be." He stood. She was soaking wet, half naked, vulnerable in ways that had nothing to do with clothing. "This is a bad idea," she said. "Probably. We're employer and employee. We're also two adults who've been circling each other for months. You're under federal investigation, which makes this terrible timing. I'm not sure I trust you. I'm not sure I blame you." The distance between them closed. She couldn't have said who moved first. His hands on her wet skin, her fingers tangling in his shirt. The kiss that had been building since that first night in bioluminescent water. They made love on the beach, sand everywhere, ocean sounds, stars overhead. The kind of moment that would seem ridiculous in retrospect, but felt inevitable in the present. Afterward, lying on her terrace daybed wrapped in a sarong, Maya asked the question she'd been avoiding. "What aren't you telling me?" Dominic was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. "Everything about this project is real," he said finally. "The resort, the design, the environmental commitment. But I need it to succeed for reasons beyond business. If I can prove Russo Properties can generate legitimate returns, I can break free of my father's investors, can transition the entire company away from suspect capital. The resort is test case. And if it fails, then I'm trapped in the same cycle that trapped my father, building beautiful things with dirty money until someone finally proves it and the empire collapses. That's a lot of pressure for one project. That's why I needed the best architect. Is that why you needed me specifically? Because I was too desperate to investigate? I needed you specifically because your designs are brilliant and because I thought..." He stopped. "What?" "Because I thought if I could build something beautiful with someone good, maybe I could prove I'm not my father." The vulnerability in his voice was startling. This wasn't billionaire developer talking. This was the son of a complicated man trying to build a different legacy. "Your father made choices," Maya said carefully. "You're making different choices. That's not the same path. Tell that to the FBI." They lay in comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who've crossed the line from professional to personal and aren't sure how to navigate back. "This complicates everything," Maya finally said. "Yes? We should probably have discussed consequences before sleeping together." "Probably. Are you regretting it? Are you?" She considered. The rational answer was yes. This was her employer, federal investigation, terrible judgment. The honest answer was no. This felt like the first genuine connection she'd had since her mother died. "No," she said. "You? Not even a little." They fell asleep on the daybed, tangled together, the ocean providing white noise and the stars providing witness. Morning brought coffee delivered by silent staff and the strange normality of the day after. Maya woke alone. Dominic had left sometime before dawn, professional discretion or personal uncertainty unclear. She found him at breakfast in the main pavilion, laptop open, on a call with lawyers. He looked up when she entered, smiled, private, genuine, just for her, then returned to legal strategy. Mark noticed. Of course Mark noticed. He'd been in construction long enough to recognize the morning after energy. "Well," he said quietly, sitting beside her, "that was inevitable." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure, and I don't know sexual tension when I see it. You two have been circling each other since day one." "We're professional." "You were professional, past tense. Now you're sleeping with your billionaire boss who's under federal investigation for money laundering. Good life choices, Maya." She should have been offended. Instead, she was grateful for the bluntness. "How bad is the FBI situation really?" she asked. "Bad enough that I've got exit strategies prepared. Fake passport bad. Offshore accounts bad. Run to countries without extradition, treaties bad." "You're joking." "I'm a project manager who's worked with the Russo family for 15 years. I'm never joking about federal investigations." Dominic finished his call, joined them. The energy shifted immediately. Mark went back to jovial project manager mode. Maya focused on her breakfast. Everything surface level, professional. But later, when they were on the boat to the site, Dominic's hand found hers below the sight line of Vasili's attention. "Regrets this morning?" he asked quietly. "Only that we didn't discuss what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" "I want to finish this resort. I want the FBI to leave us alone. I want..." She stopped, unsure how to finish. "You want to not have to choose between the work and the man." "Something like that. For what it's worth, I don't want you to have to choose either." The construction site helped. Physical work, tangible progress, problems that could be solved with engineering and determination. Maya supervised the foundation work, watched her designs become reality, felt the satisfaction of creation. But the FBI's presence lingered. Permits were suddenly delayed. Suppliers asked uncomfortable questions about payment sources. Workers gossiped about the raid, about the warrants, about whether the project would actually finish. 2 weeks after the raid, Maya's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Too many unknown calls since the FBI investigation became public knowledge. But she did. "Ms. Chen." The voice was male, American, older. "My name is Arthur Hastings. I'm an attorney." "I already have an attorney." Not for this matter. I represent the estate of Vincent Russo. Her blood went cold. The photographs in her suitcase, the connection she hadn't told Dominic about, suddenly pressing. I don't understand why you're calling me. I think you do. Or you will once we meet. Are you free to come to Malé tomorrow, alone? There are matters concerning Vincent's will that require your attention. I never met Vincent Russo. That's not entirely accurate, is it? You were in utero when your mother took those photographs in 1994. I'd call that meeting, even if you don't remember it. She couldn't breathe. He knew. How did he know? I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Chen, I've been Vincent's attorney for 30 years. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Tomorrow, Four Seasons Malé, 3 p.m., come alone or don't come at all, but either way, the information will be delivered. I'd prefer you heard it from me first. He hung up. Maya stood in the site office, phone in shaking hands, aware that everything was about to change. She told Dominic she was going to Malé for permit reviews. She told Mark she was meeting with environmental officers. She told herself she wasn't lying, just managing information until she understood what she was managing. The speedboat ride to Malé took 45 minutes. Vasily drove. Dominic had insisted on security, and she hadn't argued. But she made Vasily wait at the dock while she took a taxi to the Four Seasons. Arthur Hastings was exactly what she'd expected. 60-something, expensive suit. The kind of lawyer who managed billionaire estates and never disclosed client secrets. He'd reserved a private meeting room overlooking the marina. Ms. Chen, thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice. I gave you honesty. Sometimes that's more valuable than choice. He gestured to a chair, laid out documents on the table between them. These are going to be difficult. I apologize in advance. He opened a folder. The first document was a photograph, her mother, young and pregnant, standing with two men, Vincent Russo and Marco Chen. Your mother, Linda Chen, worked as a secretary for Russo Properties in 1993 and 1994. She had relationships with both Vincent Russo and Marco Chen. Vincent was married, Marco was single. Marco and Linda became serious. They were planning to marry after you were born. Maya's hands were shaking. She'd suspected some of this, but hearing it confirmed was different. What happened? February 1994, construction accident at a Russo Properties site. Safety violation, scaffolding collapse. Marco Chen died trying to save workers who were trapped. Vincent was on site. He tried to save Marco. Couldn't. Arthur slid another document across. A news article. The same one Maya had found. Construction safety violation leads to fatal accident. Marco Chen, 32, dies at Russo Properties site. Vincent blamed himself, Arthur continued. The safety violation was his decision. Pressured timeline, cut corners, Marco paid the price. Your mother was 8 months pregnant. Marco died knowing he'd never meet his daughter. Tears burned Maya's eyes. Her father. Dead because of Vincent Russo's company, because of a decision made for money over safety. Vincent made your mother a promise, Arthur said quietly. At the hospital, while Marco was dying, that he'd look after Linda and the baby, that he'd make sure you never struggled the way he had struggled. He slid across bank statements, 30 years of quarterly payments, $50,000 per year, every year from 1995 until your mother's death in 2023. Paid through shell company to maintain discretion. Why the secrecy? Vincent's wife wouldn't have approved of supporting his deceased partner's family to this extent, and Linda didn't want charity. She wanted independence. The NDA was her idea. She'd take the support for you, but she wouldn't claim connection publicly. Maya's mind was reeling. Everything she'd thought about her childhood, about her mother's struggles, about how they'd survived. It had been Vincent Russo's guilt money, blood money from the company that killed her father. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because of this. Arthur slid another document across the table. Last will and testament of Vincent Russo. A section highlighted in yellow. To Marco Chen's daughter, Maya Chen, I leave 30% equity in Russo Properties Holdings, LLC, along with all attendant rights, privileges, and responsibilities of ownership. This is not charity. This is acknowledgement of what her father earned, what he built, what should have been his. 30%. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. 30% of $1 billion company. That's not possible. It's not only possible, It's legally binding. Vincent's will had a 6-month confidentiality provision. He didn't want the information released while dealing with his terminal illness, but wanted you to know after his death. The confidentiality period expires in 3 days. You'll be officially notified then. Does Dominic know? Not yet, but he will when the will becomes public record. Why didn't Vincent tell me while he was alive? Because he honored the NDA with your mother. She took the settlement in 1994 in exchange for never claiming the connection publicly. Vincent kept his promise, but he also couldn't ignore his responsibility to Marco's daughter. The inheritance was his way of making amends. Amends for killing my father. Amends for the decision that killed your father. There's a difference. Maya wanted to be angry, wanted to throw the documents in Arthur's face, reject the guilt money, tell Vincent Russo's ghost to keep his blood-stained fortune. But 30%. Second largest shareholder after Dominic's 45%. And she was drowning in debt that inheritance would erase. I don't want it, Maya said. The shares, the inheritance, any of it. Not your choice. Vincent's will is irrevocable. You're a beneficiary whether you want to be or not. Then, I'll sell to Dominic. Buy me out, I'll walk away. Company bylaws prevent sale during active federal investigation. You're locked in until the RICO case resolves. The trap became clear. She owned part of a company under criminal investigation. The FBI would pressure her to testify against Dominic, against the son of the man whose company killed her father. When the will becomes public, what happens? She asked. You become a person of interest in the federal investigation. As a significant shareholder, you're subject to questioning, potentially charges. The FBI will want your testimony about company operations. I don't know anything about company operations. That won't stop them from asking, or from offering you immunity in exchange for cooperation. Cooperation meaning testifying against Dominic. Precisely. Maya stood, paced to the window. Malay Harbor spread below. Boats, tourists, people living normal lives with normal problems. She was about to become the daughter of a man killed by Russo Properties, heir to the guilt-stained empire, forced to choose between the man she was falling for and her freedom. There's one more thing, Hastings said. Vincent left you a letter, sealed. He wanted you to read it before making any decisions. He handed her an envelope, heavy paper, Vincent's handwriting, Maya. She opened it with shaking hands. Maya. If you're reading this, I'm dead, and Arthur has told you everything I couldn't say while alive. I'm sorry. For the secrecy, for the guilt money, for building your mother's silence into legal documents instead of being honest about Marco. I never told Dominic about you or Marco. This was my burden to carry, not his. I didn't want my son starting his leadership haunted by his father's failures. Your father was my best friend and business partner. His death was my fault. I made decisions prioritizing money over safety. Marco died trying to save workers from a collapse I caused. I paid for your education, your opportunities, your mother's medical care. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough. But it was what the agreements allowed and what my conscience demanded. The inheritance isn't apology, it's acknowledgement. You're Marco Chen's daughter. You deserve part of what he built, even if what I built on top of it is complicated and compromised and possibly criminal. Dominic is a good man trapped in a bad situation. I built that situation. It's my legacy and my shame. If you can forgive him for what I did, if you can work together to build something better from what I left behind, maybe both of you can escape the trap I created. Your father loved you before you were born. He chose your name, Maya, for illusion and magic. He wanted you to see beauty in the world even when the world was ugly. I hope I helped with that, even if imperfectly. I'm sorry I could never say any of this while alive. I'm sorry Marco never got to meet you. I'm sorry for everything. Vincent. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and looked at Arthur Hastings. What happens if I refuse to testify against Dominic? You could be charged with obstruction, contempt, possibly conspiracy depending on what the FBI believes you know. And if I do testify, you might get immunity. You'd definitely destroy your relationship with Dominic and possibly send him to prison for crimes his father committed. Those are terrible options. Yes. But they're the options Vincent's choices left you. She should hate Vincent Russo for this. For the secrets, the complications, the impossible inheritance. Instead, she just felt tired. "I need to talk to Dominic," she said. "I'd recommend doing that before the will becomes public. Once the FBI knows about the inheritance, everything gets more complicated." Maya took the boat back to the compound in a daze. Vasily noticed something was wrong, but didn't ask. Professional discretion or personal boundaries, she couldn't tell. The compound was quiet. Evening approaching, the light turning golden, everything beautiful and terrible. She found Dominic in his villa, working on his terrace. He looked up when she arrived, smiled, then registered her expression. "What happened?" "I need to tell you something, about your father and mine." They sat on his terrace overlooking the ocean. She told him everything. The photographs, the bank statements, Marco Chen's death in a construction accident at a Russo Properties site. His face went carefully neutral, the expression of someone controlling reaction through will. "Your father was Vincent's business partner," he said finally. "Yes." "He died in an accident at our construction site." "Yes, because Vincent prioritized profit over safety, pressured timelines, cut corners on scaffolding. Marco died trying to save workers from the collapse. And Vincent supported you for 30 years out of guilt." "Yes." He stood, paced to the railing. "I didn't know about Marco. My father never talked about the accident, never mentioned having a partner who died. Because he was ashamed. Because he was responsible." Dominic turned back to face her. "Your father died because of my father's decisions. And you've been designing a resort for the company that killed him. I didn't know until 2 weeks ago. Does this change the project?" "The project? Dominic, this changes everything. Does it change your designs?" "No, but does it change your ability to finish the resort?" "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point. You're brilliant. You're building something beautiful. Your father died because of my father's mistake, and my father spent 30 years trying to make amends. That's tragedy and guilt and responsibility, but it doesn't change what we're building here." He crossed back to her. "What else aren't you telling me?" Vincent's will. He left me 30% of the company." Dominic went very still. 30%. "He said it's not charity. It's what my father earned, what should have been his." "Making you second largest shareholder. The will becomes public when?" 3 days. "Which makes you a target in the federal investigation." "Yes." "They'll try to make you testify against me." "Yes." "They'll threaten you with prison if you don't cooperate." "That's what Arthur Hastings said." Long silence. The ocean filled it with sound, waves, distance, everything larger than them. "You should testify," Dominic said finally. "What?" "Tell them everything. Take immunity. Protect yourself. Your father died because of my father's company. You don't owe me anything. You don't owe the Russos anything. I'm not testifying against you. Maya, you don't owe me anything. We're connected through tragedy. We've slept together a few times. That's not enough reason to risk prison. We're more than that. What were they? Connected through father's tragedy, building together, falling for each other. We're something, and I'm not testifying. Then you'll go to prison for a company you didn't ask to own, for crimes you didn't commit, to protect someone whose father killed yours. Your father made a terrible decision that killed my father, but you're not your father. You're trying to fix what he broke. I won't destroy that effort just to save myself. That's insane. That's loyalty." He crossed back to her, took her hands. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me." "Then don't make it a sacrifice. Find another way." "There is no other way. RICO investigations don't have easy solutions." "Then we run." The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. "Run where?" he asked. "Somewhere they can't arrest us. Somewhere we can finish the resort and prove it's legitimate. Somewhere we buy time to find actual solutions instead of just waiting for prison. That's fleeing federal agents. That's a crime. So is money laundering, allegedly. We're already facing charges. What's one more?" He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're serious." "I'm serious. We run. We finish the project. We prove the resort generates real revenue. If we succeed, the case gets harder to prove. If we fail," she shrugged, "we fail together. This is insane. Do you have a better plan?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Mark has been preparing contingency plans," Maya continued. "Exit strategies. He's been doing this for years. He knows how to disappear when necessary." Mark knows how to run from prosecutors? Mark has worked for your family for 15 years. Of course he knows. Dominic pulled out his phone, made a call. Mark, my villa, now. We need to discuss options. Mark arrived within 5 minutes, unsurprised by the summons. The will became a problem. You knew? Maya asked. I knew Vincent had made provisions for Marco Chen's daughter. Didn't know it was you until the FBI started asking about family connections. He looked at Dominic. They'll move fast once the inheritance is public. Probably arrest both of you within 48 hours. What are our options? Dominic asked. You surrender, cooperate, hope for plea deals, or you disappear long enough to make the case fall apart. Disappear how? I've been preparing for this possibility since your father died. Private island, different atoll. No extradition, no FBI jurisdiction. Already stocked with provisions, communication equipment, everything you'd need for 6 months. 6 months? Maya asked. That's how long before statute of limitations starts creating problems for the prosecution. They need to move quickly or evidence gets stale. Witnesses become unreliable. If you can stay gone long enough, the case weakens. Or we negotiate from position of strength, Dominic added. Can't arrest what you can't find. Mark nodded. That's the idea, but you need to decide fast. The will becomes public Monday. FBI will move Tuesday, maybe Wednesday latest. That's 3 days, Maya said. That's enough, if you're committed. They looked at each other, Maya and Dominic, connected through tragedy, building together, falling for each other, survivors of guilt and secrets and impossible situations. I'm committed, Maya said. Then I guess we're running, Dominic replied. Monday morning arrived with terrible timing. Maya woke to the sound of helicopters. Not one, multiple, heavy, military grade, the kind law enforcement used for raids. She ran to her terrace. FBI helicopters circled the compound. Speedboats approached from multiple directions, more than she could count. Agents visible with weapons and tactical gear. This wasn't investigation. This was arrest. Dominic was already at her villa, dressed emergency bag over his shoulder. They're early. The will became public overnight. They moved faster than expected. What do we do? We run, now. He grabbed her hand. They ran through the compound, not toward the main dock where FBI boats were already landing, but toward the back where Vasily waited with a speedboat and supplies. Behind them, megaphones. Dominic Russo, Maya Chen, federal agents, stop and surrender. They didn't stop. Vasily already had the boat running, a different boat, faster, built for this exact scenario. Mark was already aboard with waterproof bags of supplies. Go! Dominic shouted. Maya jumped into the boat. Dominic followed. Vasily opened the throttle before they were fully seated. The speedboat launched across the water, 60 knots, maybe 70, faster than she'd ever moved on water. Behind them, FBI boats gave chase, but they were slower, heavier, built for capacity, not speed. Agent Sarah Chen's voice crackled over radio, broadcast on open frequencies. Russo, stop the boat. You're making this worse. Dominic grabbed the radio. We're not fleeing justice. We're seeking safety to negotiate. Fleeing federal agents is a crime. Protecting ourselves from wrongful prosecution is not. My father's business partner, Marco Chen, died in a construction accident at our site in 1994. He was Maya's father. Vincent supported her for 30 years out of guilt. The inheritance is restitution, not criminal proceeds. Silence on the radio. Then, come back, we'll discuss terms. When you have federal prosecutors willing to listen instead of arrest, not before. Maya grabbed the radio from Dominic. Agent Chen, Marco Chen was my father. He died because Vincent Russo prioritized profit over safety. I'm inheriting what my father earned, not criminal proceeds, not money laundering, what he built with his own hands before Vincent's decisions killed him. We're willing to talk, when you're willing to understand the full story. She turned off the radio, looked at Dominic. Did I just commit a crime? Multiple crimes, but with context that matters. The chase continued for 20 minutes. The FBI boats fell behind. Vasily knew these waters intimately, knew channels through coral reefs that larger boats couldn't navigate. He threaded them through passages that looked impossible, gaining distance with every turn. Finally, open water. The FBI helicopters still visible but distant, boats no longer in sight. An island appeared ahead, smaller than the resort site, maybe 10 acres, heavily forested. A single dock, a villa barely visible through palm trees. "The sanctuary," Mark said. 6 months of supplies, satellite communication, completely off-grid. They beached the boat. Vasily immediately started unloading supplies while Mark did a security sweep. Dominic helped Maya out of the boat, both of them soaking from spray and adrenaline. "We just became fugitives," she said. "We just became people protecting ourselves until the legal system works properly." That's generous interpretation. That's the only interpretation I can live with. The villa was smaller than the compound accommodation, but still luxurious. Dominic's backup plans included comfort. Solar power, water desalination, full kitchen, bedroom, communications room with satellite internet and encrypted lines. Mark did final inventory. "You've got food for 6 months, water indefinitely, medication, everything you might need. Vasily and I will rotate supplies every 2 weeks, weather permitting." "You're not staying?" Maya asked. "Someone needs to manage the resort construction. Can't let the FBI shut it down. That's your best defense. If we can finish it, prove it generates legitimate revenue, the case gets much harder to prove. Can you finish it without me? Your designs are complete. I can supervise construction. Won't be as good as having you on site, but it'll get done." Dominic shook Mark's hand. "Thank you for everything. Thank your father. He taught me to always have exit plans." Mark turned to Maya. "Take care of him. He's better than Vincent was, trying to fix what he inherited instead of perpetuating it." "I know." Mark and Vasily left in the boat. Maya and Dominic stood on the beach watching them disappear, the compound somewhere beyond the horizon, their old lives officially over. "So," Maya said, "we're alone on a private island. No FBI, no staff, no escape. For 6 months. Or until we can negotiate from position of strength." Same thing. They walked back to the villa. It was smaller than what they'd been living in. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, shared space. No privacy, no distance. Just them and their choices. "I should sleep on the couch," Dominic said. "We just became fugitives together. I think the time for propriety passed. We're also connected through tragedy, committed crimes together, and possibly facing decades in prison. We're also adults who already crossed that line and aren't interested in uncrossing it." He smiled, first genuine smile since the helicopters. "You're very practical about this. One of us has to be." That night, lying in bed in a villa on an island that was either sanctuary or prison, depending on perspective, Maya asked the question that had been building since the chase. "Do you regret hiring me?" "No, you. I regret the circumstances, not the choice. Even knowing it made you a target, even then, this is the best work I've ever done. The most beautiful design I'll probably ever create. If it's also the most complicated, that's just context." Dominic rolled to face her. "We're trapped on an island with FBI agents looking for us, facing potential decades in prison, building a resort that might be evidence in a criminal case. And you're calling it context? Would you prefer I call it disaster?" "I'd prefer neither of us had to call it anything. But since we're here," he kissed her. "I'm glad we're here together." They made love slowly, carefully, aware that this might be the calm before worse storms. The island was silent except for ocean sounds and their breathing and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new complications. But for now, they had sanctuary. And each other. And the slim hope that somehow, beautiful architecture and stubborn loyalty and the truth about Marco Chen's death might be enough to prove innocence. Even if innocence was relative and justice was complicated and family was the most complicated thing of all, the first week on the island established a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Maya woke at dawn, habit from months of construction schedules. Dominic was usually already awake, coffee made, sitting on the terrace watching sunrise. They'd have breakfast together in comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who have run out of small talk and haven't yet tired of each other's company. Days were strange without work. No construction site to supervise, no permits to review, no meetings to attend. Just ocean, island, each other. They swam, they read, they talked about everything except the FBI and the charges and the fact that they were fugitives with uncertain futures. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Maya said one afternoon, floating in the lagoon. "I paint, badly, but I paint." Show me. He did. Watercolors mostly. Island scenes, ocean studies. One portrait of her sketching that was surprisingly good for someone claiming incompetence. "You're better than you think," she said, studying the portrait. "That's generous assessment. That's honest assessment. You have good eye for composition. Coming from an architect who designs buildings that look like coral formations, that's high praise. Coming from a billionaire who commissioned a $350 million resort based on my coral formations, you clearly already knew I was right." They fell into domesticity. She cooked, discovering Dominic had stocked the kitchen with actual food, not just emergency rations. He cleaned, meticulous in ways that suggested his father had trained perfectionism into every detail. They existed in strange bubble where the outside world was theoretical and their problems were distant, but reality intruded through satellite phone calls. Mark called on day 10 with updates. Construction is proceeding, foundation work complete on 15 villas, environmental inspections passed. But we've got problems. "What problems?" Dominic asked, phone on speaker. "Suppliers are nervous. FBI has been questioning everyone, suggesting the project might be seized as criminal asset. Some vendors are refusing to deliver materials without payment guarantees. Pay them double, cash if necessary. From what accounts, FBI froze everything they could find. Use the Cayman accounts, the ones they don't know about." Maya raised an eyebrow. Dominic shrugged, unrepentant about offshore banking. "Already doing that," Mark said, "but cash flow is tight. We need the resort operational to generate revenue. Current timeline has us opening in 17 months. Can't happen if suppliers keep backing out. What do you need from me? Honestly, I need you to resolve the FBI situation. Either surrender and fight it in court, or negotiate some kind of deal. This limbo is killing the project." After Mark hung up, Maya and Dominic sat in silence. "He's right," she finally said. "We can't stay here forever. We can stay long enough to make the FBI realize we're not going quietly. And then what? They issue international warrants, pressure Maldivian government, eventually someone finds us. Or the case falls apart from lack of evidence." "Does it? Fall apart?" Dominic was quiet long enough that she knew the answer. "Some of my father's deals were definitely criminal," he said finally. "Money from sources that couldn't be disclosed publicly. Real estate transactions that existed primarily to move cash across borders. The kind of thing that looks exactly like money laundering because it was money laundering. But the resort isn't. The resort is legitimate. Real project, real construction, real environmental value. But some of the seed capital came from those same sources, which means legally it's connected to criminal enterprise even if the resort itself is clean. That's why the FBI can build a RICO case. That's why they think they can. But if the resort succeeds, actually generates legitimate revenue, operates transparently, proves it's real business, then the connection gets murkier. Was it money laundering, or was it just questionable investors funding legitimate project? Legal ambiguity. Criminal defense strategy. She moved to sit beside him. "What did your father actually do?" "The full story, not the sanitized version." Dominic looked out at the ocean. When he spoke, his voice carried weight of inherited shame. He started legitimate. Immigrant family, construction worker, saved enough to buy a small building in Little Italy, fixed it up, sold it, bought 2 more. Classic American success story through the 70s. Then what changed? The 80s, Reagan era, real estate boom, fortunes being made overnight. But you needed capital to expand. Banks were cautious with immigrants, even successful ones. So my father found alternative financing. The mob. Italian families who controlled construction unions, waste management, certain neighborhoods. They had cash that needed investment. He had projects that needed capital. The arrangement was mutually beneficial. Until it wasn't. Until he wanted out. Early 90s, he'd built enough success to go legitimate, tried to cut ties, return to bank financing, operate cleanly. But you don't just leave. The families who had invested expected returns, expected continued access, expected loyalty. They threatened him. They reminded him that success had been built on their capital, that walking away would be expensive, that certain construction projects might face union troubles, certain permits might get delayed. Certain partners might have unfortunate accidents. Like Marco Chen. Dominic's face went still. What do you mean? The construction accident that killed my father, February 1994. Safety violation, scaffolding collapse. Vincent was on site. Do you think it was actually an accident? I don't know. My father never talked about it, never mentioned Marco at all. When I was a kid, there were references to the partner who died, but no details. I thought it was just tragic accident. Or it was a reminder of what happens when you try to leave. The possibility hung between them that Marco Chen's death might not have been about pressured timelines and cut corners, that it might have been a message to Vincent Russo. This is what happens when you talk about going legitimate. If that's true, Maya said slowly, then my father died because yours tried to do the right thing. And my father spent 30 years paying for it, supporting you, building empire to prove Marco's death wasn't for nothing. And now we're trying to finish what both of them started. Something like that. They sat together on the terrace as the sun set, painting the sky in colors that would have looked fake in photographs. Paradise as prison, legacy as burden, family as complication that couldn't be escaped, but maybe also as opportunity to build something better. I'm sorry, Maya said, that you inherited this, that my father's death is part of it. I'm sorry your father died trying to help Vincent do the right thing. Sorry you never got to know him. Tell me what you remember about the company in the 90s, anything about Marco. I was young, 7 when he died, but I remember the office had 2 desks, Vincent and Marco, partners, equal shares. My father used to say Marco was the creative one. He could look at a building and see what it could become. Vincent was the practical one. He knew how to make it happen. Like us, Maya said quietly. Like us. The call came at 2 a.m., Mark's emergency line, the one used only for actual crises. Dominic answered immediately. What happened? FBI raided the resort site, seized equipment, shut down construction. They're claiming it's criminal assets subject to forfeiture. Maya was already awake, listening. Dominic put the phone on speaker. They can't seize the resort, Dominic said. It's not complete, not operational, and the construction has multiple legitimate investors beyond me. They can and did. Federal judge signed order at midnight. By sunrise, they'll have physical barriers around the entire atoll. What about the workers? Sent home, permit suspended, project officially on hold pending resolution of criminal charges. The resort, Maya's designs, months of work, proof of legitimacy, stopped. How long? She asked. Until you two either surrender or they find you. FBI is playing hardball. They know the project matters to you. They're using it as leverage. After Mark hung up, they sat in bed staring at nothing. They're destroying it, Maya said, to force us out. They're applying pressure. It's negotiation tactic. It's working. Is it? Are you ready to surrender? She wanted to say no, wanted to be strong enough to wait out 6 months, to let the case fall apart from lack of evidence. But the resort, her best work, the most beautiful thing she'd ever designed, was being used as weapon against them. I don't want to give up, she said, but I don't want them to destroy something good just to prove a point. That resort honors both our fathers. What Marco built, what Vincent tried to make right. I won't let the FBI use it as leverage. So we negotiate. From what position? They have the resort, the company, probably arrest warrants. What leverage do we have? The truth, Vincent's story. Evidence that the company was trying to go legitimate before he died. And the truth about Marco, that he was Vincent's partner, that he died in suspicious circumstances, that you're inheriting what your father earned, not criminal proceeds. You have evidence? I have documentation. Financial records showing Vincent tried multiple times to restructure away from suspect investors, correspondence with attorneys about going clean, proof he was trapped, not willing participant. Why didn't you mention this before? Because it implicates my father, admits he was involved with organized crime. I was hoping to avoid that conversation. We're past hoping. We're at negotiating. Dominic made a call, encrypted line, Arthur Hastings answering, despite the early hour. We need to talk about Vincent's records, Dominic said. Everything. The families he worked with, the attempts to leave, the threats, Marco Chen's death, all of it. That's dangerous information to release. More dangerous than federal prison? Potentially. The families don't like exposure. The families aren't my priority anymore. My priority is keeping Maya out of prison and proving the resort is legitimate, and honoring Marco Chen's memory by telling the truth about what happened to him. I'll compile everything, but Dominic, once this information is public, you can't take it back. You'll be exposing criminal organizations that prefer shadows. Then they should have let my father leave when he tried, and they definitely shouldn't have killed his partner. 3 days later, a boat approached the island, not FBI. Vasily confirmed via radio before it got close. A single speedboat, 2 passengers, one of them familiar from security footage, Mark, and an older woman in her 60s wearing Chanel and carrying herself like someone used to being obeyed. They beached the boat. The woman stepped out with practiced ease, barely acknowledging the water or sand. "Dominic Russo," she said in Italian accented English. "You look like your father when he was your age, before the weight of choices aged him." "Zia Sophia," Dominic responded, surprise genuine. The woman embraced him, familiar, affectionate, clearly someone with history. "Tesoro, you're in terrible trouble." "I'm aware." Sophia turned to Maya. "And you must be Marco's daughter. You have his eyes and his stubborn chin." "You knew my father?" "I knew both of them, Marco and Vincent, partners, brothers in everything but blood, until—" She stopped, looked out at the ocean. "Until it all went wrong." They moved to the villa terrace. Sophia settled into a chair like she owned it, which, given her bearing, she probably had owned similar properties. "Why are you here?" Dominic asked. "Because I've been talking to FBI, made deal, immunity for testimony. I'm telling them everything." Dominic tensed. "You're testifying against the family?" "I'm testifying about the family, the truth. Vincent's attempts to go legitimate, the threats when he tried to leave, Marco's death, the way they trapped Vincent for 30 years. She sat with the confidence of someone who'd made peace with dangerous decisions. "I was Vincent's bookkeeper for 30 years. I know everything. Which families invested, which projects were clean, which were used for laundering. I know Vincent tried to leave 5 times. I have the documentation." "Why would you expose that?" Maya asked. "Aren't you in danger?" "I'm 68 years old. My children are grown, living in Europe under different names. I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, maybe 6 months. What are they going to do? Kill me faster?" She laughed without humor. "I've kept Vincent's secrets long enough. Time to tell truth before I can't." Mark pulled out a folder, thick, organized, devastating. "Sophia's been working with FBI for 2 months, building case not against Russo properties, but against the families who pressured Vincent. Real organized crime, not just questionable real estate." "And Marco?" Maya asked quietly. "His death. Was it really an accident?" Sophia's expression darkened. "The scaffolding collapse in February 1994 was sabotage. Vincent had told the families he was done, that after Marco's baby was born, they were going completely legitimate. New financing, clean investors, cutting all ties. The families sent a message. Maya felt the room tilt. Her father murdered. Not an accident. A message. Vincent tried to save him," Sophia continued. "Was on site when it happened. Pulled Marco from the rubble. Held him while he died. Marco's last words were about you. Make sure Linda and the baby are safe. Vincent promised." Tears burned. Maya's eyes. Dominic's hand found hers. "Why didn't Vincent tell anyone?" Maya asked. "Why didn't he report it?" "Because the families made it clear. Report them, and Linda and the baby would be next. Vincent kept his mouth shut and spent 30 years paying for Marco's death. Every dollar to your mother was guilt and love and rage he couldn't express." "Why tell us this now?" Dominic asked. "Because FBI will offer you deal," Sophia said. "My testimony provides context, shows Vincent was victim, not mastermind, shows he was trapped by Marco's murder, shows you inherited nightmare, not empire. With my evidence and your cooperation, FBI might accept plea on minor charges, probation, fines, but not prison. What's the catch? Full financial disclosure, every account, every investor, every transaction, complete transparency going forward, and restructuring, independent board, court oversight, proof company can operate legitimately." Maya and Dominic looked at each other. This was the exit they'd been hoping for. Not perfect, but possible. "What about the resort?" Maya asked. "That's negotiable," Mark said. "If you agree to cooperate, FBI might unfreeze assets, allow construction to continue under oversight. If the resort succeeds, generates real revenue, operates transparently, it becomes evidence you were telling truth, that the project was legitimate attempt at clean business, and that Maya's inheritance is restitution for her father's murder, not criminal proceeds. So our defense is finishing what Marco and Vincent started. Basically, Sophia stood, looked at both of them with something like affection. Your fathers would be proud that you're trying to fix what they couldn't, that you found each other, even if circumstances were tragic, that you're choosing truth over preservation. She touched Dominic's face, maternal, brief. Vincent loved Marco like a brother. Marco's death destroyed him. He spent 30 years trying to make it right. Don't let that be for nothing. Then to Maya, your father was good man, creative, passionate, believed business could be done ethically. He died trying to save workers from collapse that was meant to kill him. That's who he was. Honor that. She returned to the boat with Mark. You have 48 hours. Then FBI expects answer. Negotiate or remain fugitives. Choose wisely. After they left, Maya and Dominic sat in silence, processing everything. Do you trust her? Maya finally asked. Sophia? Yes, she was loyal to my father when he was alive. Now she's loyal to truth. It's different loyalty, but genuine. So we negotiate. We negotiate. Together. No testifying against each other. No immunity deals that require betrayal. We go in as partners or we don't go. Partners. She liked the word. More than connected through tragedy. More than lovers. Partners. When this is over, Dominic said carefully, when the legal situation resolves and the resort opens and we're not fugitives, what happens with us? What do you want to happen? I want you to stay, not because of the project, not because of the connection to Marco and Vincent, but because I've gotten used to waking up next to you. That's pragmatic. That's honest. You're the only person in 38 years who knows everything about me and hasn't run. Well, you ran with me from federal agents, but that's different. She kissed him, soft, genuine, unconnected to crisis or adrenaline. I'll stay. After this resolves, we'll figure out what we are. Connected through tragedy, building together, falling for each other. All of it, something new, something both our fathers would be proud of. They spent the next 48 hours preparing. Arthur Hastings coordinated everything via encrypted communications, terms of negotiation, location, participants, guarantees of safety. The meeting would happen in Male, Four Seasons Presidential Suite. FBI team, including Agent Sarah Chen, DOJ prosecutors, and Arthur representing Maya and Dominic. Sophia Romano as witness providing context. Mark would supervise security. Not that they could prevent arrest if FBI chose that route, but at least they'd have advance warning. Last chance to back out, Dominic said the night before they were scheduled to return. Are you backing out? No, but I'm the one who inherited the mess. You just got caught in it because your father was Vincent's partner. My father died trying to help Vincent do the right thing. I'm not going to abandon that effort now. We finish what they started. This should not be as romantic as it is. This is probably the least romantic negotiation with federal prosecutors in history. And yet, here we are. They made love that night like it might be the last time, which it could be if negotiations failed and they ended up in separate prisons, held each other in the darkness, neither sleeping, both aware that morning would bring reckoning. The boat ride back to Male felt surreal, same route they'd fled 17 days ago, now returning voluntarily. Same ocean, same sky, completely different circumstances. FBI agents met them at the dock, not arresting, not drawing weapons, just escorting. Professional courtesy extended to people who had agreed to negotiate rather than fight. Agent Sarah Chen was there personally. Mr. Russo, Ms. Chen, thank you for coming in voluntarily. Did we have a choice? Dominic asked. Everyone has choices. You made the right one. The Four Seasons Presidential Suite had been converted to negotiation room, conference table, recording equipment, lawyers on all sides. Sophia Romano was already there, composed and ready. Arthur Hastings laid out terms. My clients are prepared to provide complete financial disclosure and cooperate fully with ongoing investigations. In exchange, we're requesting dismissal of RICO charges in favor of administrative violations. Probation and fines, but no felony. Convictions. The DOJ prosecutor, a man in his 50s named William Greer, shook his head. That's not how RICO works. Your clients fled federal agents. That alone carries prison time. They retreated to private property during what they perceived as overreach. They have now returned voluntarily. That demonstrates good faith. That demonstrates consciousness of guilt. The negotiation began in earnest. Legal arguments, precedent citations, evidence review. Sophia's testimony was presented, documentation of Vincent's attempts to extricate himself, proof of threats, evidence of coercion. This shows Vincent Russo was trapped, Arthur argued, not a willing participant in organized crime, but someone pressured by circumstances into continuing relationships he wanted to end. And Marco Chen's death was an accident. It was murder, committed to keep Vincent compliant. It also shows he committed federal crimes, Greer countered, regardless of motivation. It shows context, which matters in determining culpability and appropriate charges. And it shows that Maya Chen's inheritance is restitution for her father's murder, not distribution of criminal proceeds. She's inheriting what Marco Chen earned as Vincent's equal partner before he was killed. The discussion went in circles for hours. Coffee was served, lunch delivered, the sun tracked across windows. Maya watched Dominic across the table. He was calm, strategic, every inch the businessman who'd built on his father's foundation. Finally, Agent Chen spoke. Let's discuss the resort, the Maldives project. What evidence do you have that it's legitimate? Maya pulled out her laptop, opened files. Complete architectural plans, environmental impact assessments, construction permits from Maldivian government, supplier contracts, insurance documentation, every detail of a legitimate eco-resort project. She presented for 30 minutes, the same presentation she'd given to investors months ago, but now to federal prosecutors. Showed the biomimetic design, the coral regeneration systems, the sustainability certifications. This isn't a money laundering front, she concluded. This is an actual resort that will generate actual revenue. It's proof Russo Properties can operate legitimately. And it honors both Vincent Russo and Marco Chen, partners who wanted to build beautiful things ethically. If it completes, Greer said, currently it's frozen as criminal asset, which makes proving legitimacy impossible. You've created circular logic. We can't prove it's legitimate because you won't let us finish it. And you won't unfreeze it because we can't prove legitimacy. What are you proposing? Dominic leaned forward. Unfreeze the resort. Appoint independent oversight, court-approved monitor, regular audits, complete transparency. We finish construction under supervision. If the resort opens successfully and generates legitimate revenue, it proves our entire defense. That Russo Properties can and is operating legally. That Maya's inheritance represents her father's rightful share of what he built, that we're honoring both our fathers by completing the legitimate project they would have wanted. And if it fails, then you were right, and we accept appropriate consequences. You're asking us to gamble on architecture. We're asking you to let us prove our case through actions instead of just arguments. Let us finish what Marco Chen and Vincent Russo started, before one was murdered and the other was trapped. Long pause. Greer conferred with Agent Chen, with other prosecutors. The room waited in loaded silence. Finally, here's our counteroffer. Guilty plea on administrative violations, improper financial disclosures, failure to report certain transactions, probation, substantial fines, but no felonies, complete financial restructuring, independent board, court oversight, regular audits. The resort gets unfrozen and construction continues, but under court-appointed supervision. If it opens successfully within 18 months and operates legitimately, remaining charges get reduced to misdemeanors. Arthur looked at Dominic and Maya. That's actually quite generous, better than I expected. What's the timeline? Dominic asked. Guilty plea entered today. Probation terms finalized within 30 days. Resort oversight begins immediately. You have 18 months from today to open the resort and demonstrate legitimate operations. Maya did the math. 18 months from today, with construction already partially complete. Aggressive but achievable if they could restart work immediately. We accept, Dominic said. We accept, Maya confirmed. Documents were prepared, signatures collected, the agreement formalized. 3 hours of paperwork to resolve months of crisis. Strange anticlimax after everything that led here. When it was done, Agent Chen approached Maya privately. "You're either very loyal or very brave. Can I be both?" Most people would have taken immunity and testified, would have protected themselves. Most people don't discover their father was murdered by the same people who trapped their business partner's son. Circumstances were unusual, to say the least. Agent Chen almost smiled. "For what it's worth, I think your resort designs are brilliant. I hope you get to finish them. And I'm sorry about your father. Thank you for investigating thoroughly enough to understand the full story." They shook hands, mutual respect, despite being on opposite sides. The press conference was scheduled for evening. Joint statement, controlled message, image rehabilitation. Dominic and Maya stood behind a podium with Arthur Hastings, facing cameras and reporters from international media. Dominic read the prepared statement. "My father built a successful business over 50 years. In doing so, he made decisions under pressure that compromised that business's integrity. He was trapped by circumstances that included the murder of his business partner, Marco Chen, in 1994. I inherited both the success and the complications. I take full responsibility for my role in continuing certain practices. I'm committed to transparent, legitimate business operations going forward and to honoring both my father's legacy and Marco Chen's memory," Maya continued. "I recently learned Marco Chen was my biological father, murdered before I was born. Vincent Russo supported me for 30 years out of guilt and loyalty to his partner. The inheritance I'm receiving isn't criminal proceeds. It's what my father earned as equal partner in Russo Properties. While I can't change the past, I can ensure the future is ethical and transparent. The Maldives Resort will be a showcase for sustainable development and legitimate business, honoring both Vincent Russo and Marco Chen." Questions came rapid fire. "Are you in a relationship?" "That's personal," Maya responded. "How do you feel about your father being murdered?" "I'm grateful the truth is finally being told. My father died trying to help Vincent Russo go legitimate. That effort shouldn't be forgotten." "Will you complete the resort?" Dominic. "Yes, under court oversight, with complete transparency. The resort will open within 18 months and will demonstrate that Russo Properties can operate successfully as a legitimate enterprise, honoring the vision Marco Chen and Vincent Russo shared." "Do you regret running from the FBI?" "I regret that circumstances made us feel unsafe negotiating from positions where we were vulnerable. I'm grateful we were able to reach an agreement that protects both justice and our ability to build something meaningful." The conference ended. They'd survived, not unscathed, probation, fines, permanent scrutiny, but survived. Arthur Hastings pulled them aside afterward. "You did well. The guilty plea isn't ideal, but it keeps you out of prison. The resort deadline is aggressive but achievable, and the court oversight, while inconvenient, actually protects you. If you succeed, no one can question legitimacy." "Thank you," Dominic said, "for everything. Thank your father and Marco. They set up contingencies decades ago. Vincent knew someday this would come, and he wanted both of you protected." Arthur looked at Maya. "Your father would be proud of who you became, what you're building." After the lawyers left, after the media dispersed, after the crisis formally concluded, Maya and Dominic stood on the hotel balcony overlooking Malé Harbor. "We're going back," Maya said, "to the resort to finish what they started, with federal oversight, an 18-month deadline, and probably weekly audits." "Sounds romantic. Sounds like prison with better ocean views." She leaned against him. "We could have stayed on the island, could have remained fugitives, could have said no to all of it. And lived how? Running forever, never finishing the resort, never proving what both our fathers believed, that beautiful architecture can be built ethically. So you chose supervised construction. I chose partnership with you, building something that matters, even if the construction process is monitored, honoring Marco and Vincent by finishing what they couldn't. That's definitely the most romantic thing anyone said while under federal probation." They went to bed in a hotel room that was luxurious, but not home. Tomorrow they'd return to the resort site. Tomorrow construction would restart under new management. Tomorrow they'd begin the 18-month countdown to either vindication or failure. But tonight they just existed as two people who'd survived crisis, chosen each other repeatedly, and somehow ended up as family in all the ways that mattered. The boat ride to the resort site the next morning felt like return from exile. Mark met them at the dock, grinning. "Welcome back, fugitives, or former fugitives, or whatever you are now." "Supervised probationers?" Dominic said. "Close enough. Come see what you've been missing." The resort site had changed in 3 weeks. Foundation work on 30 villas was complete. Structural framing on 10. The main pavilion was taking shape, Maya's Nautilus-inspired design rendered in concrete and steel. It was beautiful, even incomplete, even surrounded by construction equipment and federal oversight notices. It was beautiful. "How long?" Maya asked. 18 months if everything goes perfectly, 20 months realistically. We're cutting it close. Then we'd better not waste time. Maya spent the rest of the day doing what she did best, supervising construction, solving problems, turning designs into reality. Dominic handled the business side, suppliers, logistics, the new independent board that would oversee operations. They fell into new rhythm. Not as fugitives, not in paradise isolation, but as partners building something real under very real scrutiny. Court-appointed monitor arrived the following week, a woman named Patricia Morrison, who'd overseen corporate restructurings for 20 years. She was thorough, skeptical, and surprisingly helpful. "I'm not here to make you fail," she told them at their first meeting. "I'm here to ensure transparency. If you're actually building legitimate business, my reports help prove that. If you're not, my job is documenting the evidence." "No pressure," Maya said. "Just reality. Build something real, and I'll write reports that say so. Build something fake, and I'll write different reports." "What if we build something real that happened to start with complicated financing and tragic history?" Patricia smiled slightly. "Then you'll be like most major construction projects in history. The difference is you have oversight to prove the endpoint is legitimate, regardless of the starting point. And you have personal motivation, honoring your fathers, that most developers lack." Evening, back at the compound, now just housing, not sanctuary, Maya and Dominic reviewed progress. 18 months, she said. "Think we can do it? With you designing and me managing and Mark supervising and Patricia monitoring and probably several dozen other people watching our every move?" "Yes." "You sound confident. I sound determined. There's a difference. Not much of one." He pulled her close. "We've survived FBI raids, inheritance revelations, becoming fugitives, and negotiating with federal prosecutors. Construction deadlines seem manageable by comparison. You're significantly underestimating construction delays. And you're significantly underestimating my motivation to prove everyone wrong, to finish what Marco and Vincent started, to build something that honors both of them." They made love that night in a bedroom that was theirs, in a compound that was no longer fortress, with futures that were uncertain but possible. Outside, the Indian Ocean continued its eternal rhythm. Construction materials waited for morning crews. Federal monitors prepared their next reports. The resort grew slowly toward completion, and two people who'd started as architect and client become connected through their father's tragedy and chosen each other repeatedly despite impossible complications, simply existed in the space they'd created together, not perfect, not uncomplicated, but theirs. And after everything, after secrets and raids and escapes and negotiations, that was enough. 18 months later, the resort opened under impossible blue skies and perfect conditions. Maya stood on the beach watching the first guests arrive by seaplane, travel journalists, luxury magazine editors, environmental certification officials, and carefully vetted VIPs who'd paid premium rates to experience the debut. 50 villas spread across the atoll like organic sculptures grown from the reef itself. The biomimetic foundations she'd designed had worked better than projected. Coral was actually regenerating, fish populations increasing, the entire ecosystem improving from human presence rather than being destroyed by it. The main pavilion rose from the lagoon in Nautilus curves, glass, and sustainable teak, solar panels disguised as decorative elements. Every detail she'd sketched 18 months ago while FBI agents were raiding the compound had been realized. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever created. Nervous? Dominic appeared beside her, wearing linen pants and a white shirt. Barefoot despite being a billionaire, hosting the most important opening of his career. Terrified. You? Absolutely, but also confident. We built something real. The reviews had started arriving within hours of the first guests checking in. Architectural Digest called it a masterpiece of sustainable luxury. Travel Plus. Leisure wrote, the resort that proves environmental responsibility and five-star service aren't mutually exclusive. The Guardian's architecture, critic used the word transcendent. More importantly, the court-appointed monitor's final report had been unequivocal. Russo Properties Maldives Resort operates with complete transparency, generates legitimate revenue through documented channels, and demonstrates that the company can and does conduct business ethically and legally. Patricia Morrison had delivered the report personally that morning, shaking both their hands. You did it. Built exactly what you said you would. My oversight is complete. As far as federal supervision is concerned, you're free. Free. The word had weight after 18 months of weekly audits, constant documentation, and federal scrutiny of every financial transaction. Dominic's probation had been officially completed 3 weeks ago. Maya's administrative violations had been reduced to formal warnings. The guilty pleas remained on record, but the prison sentences that had seemed inevitable were now just hypothetical outcomes they'd successfully avoided. The resort was operating at 95% capacity 6 months before projected profitability. Reservations were booked through next year. Sustainability certifications exceeded requirements. International press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. They'd proved it. The resort was legitimate. Russo Properties could operate successfully without criminal funding. Vincent's dying wish and Marco's unrealized dream had been fulfilled. That evening, there was a private celebration before the official opening gala. Close friends, family, the team who'd made everything possible. Mark Patterson raised his glass. To the most stressful, legally complicated, federally supervised construction project I've ever managed. And to Maya, who designed something so beautiful that even FBI agents had to admit it was real. Vasily nodded silently, his version of effusive praise. Amira Hassan, the environmental officer who'd been skeptical 18 months ago, smiled genuinely. You proved me wrong. The reef is healthier now than before construction. That's unprecedented. Elizabeth Russo, Dominic's mother, who'd flown in from New York, stood with champagne and complicated emotions visible on her face. She'd been angry when they fled the FBI, relieved when they negotiated, and cautiously supportive during the 18 months of reconstruction. Now she looked at Maya with something approaching acceptance. My husband kept many secrets, learning about his partnership with Marco, and that he'd been supporting Marco's daughter all these years. That was one of the more honorable surprises. Vincent would be proud of what you've built together. Thank you, Maya said quietly. It wasn't exactly warm, but it was genuine. Sophia Romano was there too, still alive despite pancreatic cancer diagnosis, defying medical expectations through sheer stubbornness. Vincent is smiling somewhere, she said in her Italian-accented English. He loved two men like brothers, his own father and Marco Chen. Seeing Marco's daughter and his son build what they both dreamed made it clean, made it beautiful, made it real. Both of them would be proud. I am proud. Arthur Hastings raised his glass last. To clients who made my job unnecessarily difficult, but ultimately rewarding, and to proving that complicated beginnings don't determine endings. The official gala was scheduled for tomorrow. Black tie, international guests, media coverage. But tonight was for the people who'd lived through the chaos. After dinner, Dominic pulled Maya aside to the beach. There's something we need to discuss, he said. That sounds ominous? It's not. It's just, we've been so focused on finishing the resort, proving legitimacy, surviving federal oversight. We haven't talked about what happens next. What do you want to happen next? He reached into his pocket, pulled out a box, small, velvet, unmistakably jewelry. I want to marry you, properly, not because of federal pressure or inheritance complications, but because I love you and I want everyone to know it. He opened the box, ring inside, simple, elegant, single stone that caught moonlight. This isn't about merging assets or creating legal structures. This is me asking you to be my wife, because I can't imagine building anything else without you. Maya looked at the ring, at him, at the resort they'd created together. You realize we're already family in the most complicated way possible. I realize we're connected through tragedy, built partnership through crisis, became fugitives, became probationers, became business partners who somehow work. I'd like to add married to that list. That's quite a resume for a relationship. That's quite a woman I'm proposing to. She kissed him, soft, genuine, the kind of kiss that answered without words. Yes, obviously yes, but I'm choosing the venue. We're standing at the venue. Then I'm choosing the date and the guest list and basically everything else. Deal. They were married 2 weeks later on the beach where they'd first swum with bioluminescent plankton, where they'd first kissed, where everything had started 18 months ago. Small ceremony, Mark as best man, Amira as maid of honor, close friends and family. Sophia Romano in the front row, Elizabeth Russo beside her, formerly adversarial women, bonded by complicated love for Vincent and respect for Marco. Arthur Hastings officiated. It seemed appropriate that the lawyer who negotiated their freedom would also formalize their marriage. The vows were personal, honest, reflecting everything they'd survived. Dominic. You saw me at my worst, fugitive, desperate, inheritor of crimes I didn't commit. You stayed. You believed I could be better. You made me want to be better. I don't deserve you, but I'll spend every day earning the privilege of your partnership. Maya, you gave me more than opportunity or security. You gave me family when I didn't know I needed it. You gave me purpose when I thought I wanted independence. You gave me love when I was afraid to want it. I choose you. Every complication, every challenge, every day. Rings were exchanged, simple platinum bands, no diamonds, nothing ostentatious. They had both seen enough luxury to know that value wasn't about cost. The kiss was witnessed by ocean, sunset, coral reef regenerating beneath their feet. Resort they had built together, standing as proof that beauty could come from complicated beginnings. Reception was held in the main pavilion. Dinner catered by the resort's restaurant. Local seafood, sustainable ingredients, Maldivian spices blended with international techniques. Wine was expensive but not ridiculous. A 2015 Chateauneuf du Pape that cost $300 per bottle instead of thousands. They were wealthy but not excessive, successful but not ostentatious. They'd learned the difference. Speeches were kept short. Mark told construction stories that were funny now, but had been terrifying in the moment. Amira spoke about environmental victories. Elizabeth offered reserved but genuine blessing. Sophia Romano, looking frailer than 2 weeks ago, but determined to be present, stood with difficulty. Vincent loved Marco like a brother, she said, her Italian accent making the words somehow more emotional. They built an empire together in those early years. When Marco died, that accident, Vincent never forgave himself. But he kept his promise. 30 years, he supported Linda and Maya. Made sure Marco's daughter had opportunities. And now, she smiled through tears. Now, Marco's daughter and Vincent's son have built something both fathers would be proud of. Connected by tragedy, united by choice, family through partnership. This is what loyalty looks like across generations. She sat to applause, exhausted but satisfied. Dancing followed. Maya and Dominic's first dance to a song neither of them could remember choosing, but that somehow felt right. Then general dancing, the kind that happens when people who've survived crisis together finally get to celebrate. Later, much later, in their private villa at the resort they had built, Maya and Dominic lay on the terrace watching stars. Probation completed, Dominic said, ticking off accomplishments. Resort operational, federal oversight concluded, married, what's next? Well, Maya said carefully, there's one more item for the list. What's that? Pregnant? He sat up so fast he nearly fell off the daybed. What? 3 months. I wanted to wait until probation cleared and the resort opened and we weren't constantly under federal scrutiny. You've known for 3 months? I've been building a resort under court supervision while planning a wedding. It seemed like enough complications without adding pregnancy announcement. We're having a baby. We're having a family. He touched her stomach, not showing yet, but real, growing, future made tangible. Vincent Russo's legacy and Marco Chen's legacy, he said quietly, wonder in his voice. United in one family, growing up without secrets, without FBI investigations or mob pressure or inherited obligations. Just normal. As normal as billionaire resort developers' children get. That's pretty normal by our standards. They lay together watching stars, feeling small and significant simultaneously. Below them, the resort glowed with warm lighting, guests in villas, staff maintaining perfection, everything operating exactly as designed. The empire built on crime was becoming empire built on beauty. The families fractured by tragedy were becoming family united by choice. Two people who shouldn't have worked, architect and mobster's son, connected through their father's complicated history, were somehow exactly right. Dominic's phone buzzed. Text from Mark. Media coverage is incredible. NYT architecture critic called it the resort that redefines luxury. WSJ business section noted Russo Properties successful rehabilitation. You're officially legitimate. Legitimate. After 50 years of luxury development, after 30 years of Vincent's trapped existence, after 18 months of federal oversight, legitimate. Thank you, Dominic said quietly. For what? For staying, for believing we could build something good from complicated foundations, for choosing family I didn't know I had, for, he gestured at the resort, the ocean, everything, for this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, for trusting me with both our father's dreams, for becoming family worth fighting for. Even knowing everything, the mob connections, the federal investigation, the way our father's partnership ended in tragedy, especially knowing everything, that's what makes it real. They fell asleep on the terrace, wrapped in each other and possibilities. The ocean provided soundtrack. The resort stood as monument to persistence. Their future grew in ways both literal and metaphorical. Morning brought new reality. They weren't fugitives or probationers or defendants. They were married, expecting, successful. They'd built exactly what Vincent wanted, and what Marco would have wanted, legitimate business generating real value. And they'd built it together. Over breakfast, they reviewed plans for the next project. Dominic had been approached about developing sustainable housing in the Maldives, affordable, environmentally responsible, serving local workers. Vincent 2.0, Maya said, reviewing the proposals. Building empire but doing it right, the way Marco would have wanted to. Building something that matters, with you. Always with me. You're stuck with me now. Legally, professionally, familially. That's not a word. It should be. We invent a new category of relationship. We get new vocabulary. She moved to him, stood between his knees. His hands found her waist, rested on the belly that would grow over coming months. What do you think they would say? She asked. Vincent and Marco, if they could see this? I think Vincent would say he's sorry for the complications, but proud of the solutions. And I think Marco would be proud of you for building something beautiful, for honoring his legacy, for choosing family with the son of the man whose company he died working for. You think Vincent planned it? The inheritance? Bringing us together? I think he hoped that his son and his partner's daughter might find each other, might build together what he and Marco couldn't finish. Maybe hoping is the same as planning. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who've survived impossible odds and built something beautiful anyway. The resort below was waking, guests emerging for breakfast, staff beginning daily routines, everything operating with the smooth precision of luxury hospitality done right. This was their father's legacy, not the questionable financing or mob connections or federal investigations. This, beauty built from complications, family created from tragedy, love developed through crisis. Ready? Dominic asked. For what? Day one of the rest of our lives. No federal oversight, no legal deadlines. Just us, building whatever comes next. I'm ready. You? With you? Always. They walked down to the resort, hand in hand. Husband and wife, business partners, partners honoring two fathers' legacies, parents-to-be, survivors of crisis, builders of beauty. The compound had been sanctuary and prison and home. The resort was vindication and future. The family was complicated and chosen and exactly right. And as they walked along beaches they had designed, past villas they had imagined, through paradise they had created together, Maya thought, Sometimes the most beautiful things are built on the most complicated foundations. Sometimes family is who you choose after learning the truth. Sometimes love is worth fighting the FBI for. And sometimes, just sometimes, desperate architects and trapped billionaire heirs build something that transcends inheritance, redeems legacy, and proves that beauty and legitimacy can coexist. Marco Chen's daughter and Vincent Russo's son, connected by tragedy, united by choice, family through partnership. Even when the beginning is criminal and the middle is chaotic and the journey requires fleeing federal agents on speedboats, especially then, because the best stories aren't the easy ones. They're the ones worth surviving for.